She was just a girl on the side of a lonely road, offering to fix a stranger's car with nothing but a wrench, a weathered backpack, and a ring too valuable for her small hands. But what began as an act of kindness would ignite the fall of an empire. The Girl with the Gear. Ring is a sweeping tale of hidden identities, corporate betrayal, and generational courage, where one orphan's quiet genius unearths a dark legacy, exposes a billion-dollar conspiracy, and rewrites the blueprint for justice. What they dismissed as a child was the spark that would burn their world down. The fog clung low to the cracked asphalt, like it had secrets to keep. It was the kind of afternoon that blurred the lines between dream and memory, where even the wind seemed to hush itself, as if waiting for something to happen. Leona Carter, 12 years old and already more familiar with Greece than most grown men, walked the long stretch of Rainer Ridge Road, with her backpack hanging off one shoulder and a pair of calloused fingers tapping rhythmically against its canvas strap. Her braids bounced with each step, woven tight by her Aunt Joyce that morning. The school day was done, and so was she, tired, hungry, and ready to disappear into the garage behind their house where tools didn't talk down to her and engines didn't judge. That was when she saw it, a car sleek and candy apple red, parked at a crooked angle on the roadside, A69 Camaro. SS, its hood yawning open like a wounded animal. A man in a tailored navy suit paced near it like a wolf in a trap. His phone pressed against his ear voice, sharp and clipped. "I don't care if it costs triple, just get someone out here. I have a meeting with the governor in 2 hours." Gand ando pixio. Leona slowed. "Everything about," the man said. He didn't belong here, from the watch on his wrist that could pay her uncle's rent for a year, to the way his polished shoes hadn't quite adapted to the dust and gravel. Aunt Joyce's voice rang in her head. "Don't talk to strangers, baby girl, especially not the kind who don't know how to look at you right." "Eu está sendo." And yet, she stopped. It wasn't that the man looked dangerous. He looked desperate lost. There was something about the way his jaw clenched that didn't scream power. It whispered panic. She shifted the weight of her backpack and cleared her throat. "Excuse me, sir. Need some help with your car." The man turned. Nicholas Grayson was a name she didn't know, but millions did. The kind of man who had buildings named after him, not because he was kind, but because he was rich enough to make his kindness optional. He blinked once, twice, then looked down at her, looked and she could see it in his eyes, the automatic dismissal. She was just a kid. A black girl in faded jeans, scuffed sneakers, and an oversized t-shirt that read, "NASA failure is not an option." "That's kind of you, sweetheart," he said, tone dipped in polite condescension. "But this is a high-performance vehicle. I need a real mechanic." Leona didn't flinch. She walked forward without asking, slung her bag down next to the bumper, and peered into the engine with practiced ease. The air smelled like warm rubber, and something sweeter, like burnt syrup. She tapped the radiator gently, then crouched to inspect beneath. "You smell that coolant and that little puddle down there. Hose leaks, that's why it overheated. Do in boresto tabensord." Nicholas opened his mouth, closed it. Leona pulled a small metal case from her backpack. "Temporary sealant tape. My uncle says it's like a Band-Aid for engines. Won't last forever, but it'll get you to town." She spoke as if she were narrating her documentary, calm, precise, almost clinical. Nicholas watched strangely transfixed as her small fingers wrapped the hose with gentle pressure. "What's your name?" he asked quietly now. Leona Carter." She extended a hand. It was smudged with grease steady as steel. He shook it more out of instinct than courtesy. Nicholas Grayson." A pause stretched between them, fragile as glass. She raised her hand to push a braid away from her face, and that's when he saw it. The ring. It wasn't just any ring antique gold shaped like a tiny gear, with a delicate green glint at its center, an emerald with a crescent-shaped imperfection barely visible under sunlight. His pulse slowed. 12 years ago, he had given that very ring to a child in an orphanage, Starlight Haven, right before it was shuttered under mysterious circumstances, a promise broken and buried. Now, here it was, on the finger of a girl who fixed broken things as if she were born to do it. And suddenly nothing in Nicholas Grayson's meticulously calculated life made sense anymore. Nicholas couldn't remember the last time a 12-year-old had made him speechless. Then again, he couldn't remember the last time he'd thought about that orphanage. Or the ring. His fingers flexed against his palm as he watched Leona dust her hands on her jeans. That ring, it couldn't be a coincidence. There had to be others like it out there, right? but the crescent-shaped flaw in the emerald that was too specific, too intentional. It wasn't a flaw at all. It was a signature, his signature. "You live around here?" he asked, trying to keep his voice level, casual. Failing. Leona looked up, wary for the first time. "Just down that way," she said, gesturing toward the tree-lined curve in the road, past the church, next to the old radio tower. Nicholas hesitated, then held out his keys. "Let me return the favor. I'll give you a ride. I insist." Leona studied him for a long moment, the kind of look that assessed more than appearances. She nodded. They drove in silence for the first few minutes. The Camaro rattled slightly but held. "You said your uncle taught you about engines?" "Uncle Malcolm? He's a mechanic, and my aunt's a nurse. They've been taking care of me since my mom passed." Nicholas tightened his grip on the wheel. "I'm sorry to hear that." "She left me this ring," Leona added quietly. "Said one day it would make sense." He glanced sideways. "Did she ever tell you where it came from?" Leona shook her head. "Only that it used to belong to someone special. Someone who made a promise." Nicholas looked ahead, the road blurring. He had made that promise 12 years ago, to a little girl in a gray dress who smiled like she already knew how the world worked, and he hadn't kept it. As they approached the modest, neatly kept house, Leona gathered her things. "Thanks for the ride, Mr. Grayson." He pulled a business card from his wallet and handed it to her. "If you ever need anything at all, you call me." Leona accepted it, slowly puzzled. "Okay, sure." She stepped out. The ring on her finger caught the fading light. Nicholas watched her go, watched the front door swing open, and a tall man, presumably Uncle Malcolm, step out to greet her. He didn't drive off. He reached for his phone. "Ramirez," he said. When the line clicked, "I need you to dig into something for me. A girl named Leona Carter. And I need every file you can find on a place called Starlight Haven. The past doesn't stay buried. It waits tucked inside, attics, locked drawers, and the dark folds of memory. And for Leona Carter, it was waiting in an envelope she didn't know existed." That night, after a quiet dinner of buttered rice and roast chicken, she sat in the garage behind the house, soldering a broken transistor radio, while humming softly under her breath. The smell of warm metal oil and lemon disinfectant calmed her. She liked it here. Here she knew what everything was supposed to do, and if it broke, she could fix it. Malcolm watched her from the doorway for a long moment before speaking. "Kiddo," he said softly, "we need to talk." Leona looked up, instantly alert. Malcolm rarely used that voice. Joyce joined them, holding something between her hands. A yellowed envelope. Leona sat up straighter. "What is that?" Joyce answered, her voice thick with hesitation. "It's from Clarice, your mother. She gave it to us years ago. Told us to give it to you if someone from the Grayson family ever showed up." The room went silent except for the soft tick of the old wall clock. Leona took the envelope with careful hands. Her fingers trembled, but her eyes didn't flinch. Inside was a letter and a photograph. The photo showed a younger Clarice in a nurse's uniform, holding a baby wrapped in a gray blanket. Behind her stood a squat brick building with an iron sign over the gate, Starlight Haven, Home for Children. The letter began, "My sweet Leona. If you are reading this, it means your past is catching up to you." Malcolm and Joyce remained quiet as she read. Each line unspooled a truth she hadn't even known was missing. Clarice had been a nurse at Starlight. One night she discovered files marked with initials and test scores, children labeled not by names, but by potential intelligence reflexes and emotional resistance. It read more like a military dossier than an adoption ledger. Clarice had overheard a conversation. Men in suits. Voices low. The name Grayson. She hadn't understood everything, but she'd understood enough. Her patient files were being used for something they were never meant to be. That some children were being relocated, but no records followed them. And so, in the middle of a rainstorm, Clarice took Leona and ran. "They wanted to catalog you," the letter read, "to monitor what made your mind work differently. I saw you solve puzzles in seconds. Fix toys no adult could. You weren't safe there, my love." She had changed both their names, moved towns, disappeared. But the past, Clarice warned, was patient. One day she wrote, "They'll want what they think is theirs." Leona folded the letter slowly. Her chest felt tight, but her hands were steady. "I'm not theirs," she said aloud. "No," Joyce replied firmly. "You never were." Just then, a light flashed through the garage window. A black car parked down the street, unmoving. Malcolm's jaw tightened. He stepped outside without a word. Inside the car, a man in a dark jacket spoke into a phone. "She has the ring," he said. "And she has the letter." Back in the garage, Leona stood with the photo in one hand, the letter in the other, and a fire starting to build in her chest. The past was here, but this time she wasn't running. Nicholas Grayson didn't sleep that night. His penthouse in Seattle's glass-walled skyline had once been a fortress of silence and strategy. But now, the silence felt like an accusation. He stood by the window, watching headlights shimmer far below, like fireflies lost in fog. Clarice's name echoing in his head. The ring, the orphanage, the promise. And the file he had pulled from the archive himself, Project Starlight, confidential authorized access, B. Grayson. His father? He opened it again. Inside were documents marked Starlight Protocol, clinical reports, charts of children's reflex testing, abstract reasoning scores, and neurological evaluations. Notes scribbled in the margins, high retention, strategic potential, psychometric anomaly. Next to a column of names, just initials was a red star. LCs. Nicholas felt cold. He dialed a number he hadn't used in years. "Ramirez," he said, "I need everything you can find on Starlight Haven. Focus on a nurse named Clarice Carter, and find out who authorized its closure." Meanwhile, across town, Leona sat cross-legged on the floor of her room, rereading the letter by moonlight. Her hands trembled when she turned the ring. Click. The emerald shifted, revealing a compartment smaller than a fingernail. Inside, barely visible, was a wafer-thin microchip, no larger than a lentil. Her fingers hovered. Clarice had hidden something, a blueprint, a secret. Leona Malcolm knocked. "Someone's here." She followed him to the porch, where a man with a press badge stood beneath the porch light. "Jordan Elric," he said, showing his ID, "I'm working on an independent documentary about orphanage corruption. Someone leaked footage to me, footage from Starlight Haven, featuring your mother." Leona stared. Jordan continued, "I believe Clarice Carter tried to expose what was happening. I think your family was silenced, and I think you may be the last key to what they were trying to hide." From the shadows across the street, another figure watched. Benjamin Grayson set his cigar against the car door, expression unreadable. "She's alive," he said into his phone. "The gear ring worked. We need to initiate protocol recovery." The voice on the other end was cold. "And Nicholas. He's getting too close. Monitor him, but don't interfere. Yet." Back inside, Leona looked at Jordan. "You said someone leaked footage who?" "An anonymous contact. Said he once worked for the Graysons." Leona's eyes narrowed. She turned to Malcolm and Joyce. "I need to know what Clarice was fighting for. If the chip has answers, I want to read it." That night, Nicholas's phone lit up. One message. "Unknown, the sender. Project Starlight wasn't the only one. Clarice died for what she knew. Ask your father about Project Eden. Andes Nismans." Nicholas stared at the message as if it were radioactive. Somewhere in a locked cabinet, Benjamin Grayson opened a file labeled Project Eden. On the first page was a name. Leona Clarice Carter. The morning after the message, Nicholas stood in the archives of Grayson Innovations' downtown headquarters, breathing recycled air and secrets. He unlocked a cabinet marked Legacy Initiatives, classified, and there it was. Project Eden. The folder was thin but heavy. Inside were memorandums marked internal use, only written in his father's sharp, efficient handwriting. Children are identified through predictive cognition screenings, strategic social placement through selective adoption, subtle behavioral testing in natural environments. Nicholas's stomach turned as he flipped through pages. He hadn't just missed something, he'd inherited it. And at the center of it all was Leona Clarice Carter. Across town, Leona sat with Jordan Elric and Malcolm in the workshop. The microchip had been placed inside an old tablet they'd wiped clean and rigged with encryption software. The screen buzzed. "Access granted," Jordan muttered. "Blueprints, names, video files." And then one labeled Clarice. Final message. The three leaned closer. Clarice appeared, eyes tired but resolute, seated against a plain backdrop. "If this is being watched," she said, "then I've failed to protect Leona from everything I feared." She spoke of testing facilities disguised as orphanages, of Grayson's quiet funding of intelligence gathering disguised as care, of children removed not for adoption, but for control. "I found a list." Clarice said, 37 names. "All children are flagged by the Eden Protocol. If you're watching this, you're probably one of them. Or you're trying to stop them." Leona's breath caught. 37, just like her. Meanwhile, Nicholas sat in his office haunted. He pulled up an old security video Jordan had leaked, Clarice racing through the orphanage halls with baby Leona. Behind her, men in suits, one of them, his father. Nicholas reached for his phone. Ramirez, locate the Eden sites. Every one of them, and protect the girl. Down in the street, a man in a maintenance uniform watched Leona's house from a van with tinted windows. Inside, a screen pulsed with her face cross-referenced with archived files. Target confirmed, a voice said through the radio. The man didn't respond. He just started the van. Back at the house, Jordan turned to Leona. You need to understand what you're sitting on. This isn't just about your past. It's about hundreds of kids who were never supposed to remember theirs. Outside, tires crunched against gravel. Malcolm peered through the blinds. They found us. Leona stood slowly, the tablet still glowing with her mother's voice. I'm done running. Malcolm locked the garage door just as the van idled outside. The gate. Leona's fingers hovered near the tablet's power button, but she didn't turn it off. She let the blue glow of her mother's final message wash over her. Malcolm, Jordan whispered, "They're not bluffing." "I know." Leona stood. "We make this public tonight. You realize what that means?" Jordan's voice was grave. "You'll have a target on your back, bigger than ever." Leona nodded. "Let them come." Inside the van, the man in the maintenance uniform adjusted a headset. Confirming location, the girls are here, preparing extraction. But before he could move, a jamming frequency hit. His receiver. Static swallowed the signal. A mile away, Nicholas stood beside Ramirez on a rooftop, watching a feed from a hacked satellite relay. "She's in danger," Nicholas muttered. Already intercepted the van's signal, Ramirez replied, "Now we give her a choice." Nicholas pulled out his phone and hit a single button labeled "Put my ik sarf opt a trace safe house." Back at the workshop, the tablet pinged. Leona picked it up. A message blinked across the screen. "Pop on a ready window. Indin dipan 10 minutes trust and horrors and javer yasi space dower." "Is that?" Nicholas Malcolm asked. Leona didn't speak. She grabbed her backpack, stuffed the tablet and ring into it, and looked at Jordan. "We'll finish this later. Right now, we move." Jordan helped Joyce gather files. Malcolm disabled the security cameras, and within minutes, they were slipping out the side alley as the van's engine revved louder. Inside the van, the agent's monitor went dark. Target lost. Ramirez smirked, "Too slow." They drove through the city's industrial district to a warehouse under renovation. Nicholas was already there, coat off, sleeves rolled, surrounded by screens and a makeshift war room. Leona stepped in and locked eyes with him. "You gave me that ring." Nicholas's face softened. "I did. I just didn't realize how much it would cost you." Jordan set down the files. "We exposed them. All of it, not just Eden, every project." Leona walked to the largest screen and uploaded Clarice's video. Then she accessed the chip again. "There are more names," she said. "I want them protected." Nicholas nodded. "I'll make sure of it." And then she turned to face the camera. Jordan whispered, "We're live in 5, 4, 3. The red light blinked on. The video went live at exactly 8:00 p.m. Within minutes, it spread like wildfire, first on niche news forums, then to major platforms. Hashtags bloomed across the digital world, like sparks from dry kindling. Yeah, Starlight, Truth. Yeah, Grayson Files. Leona speaks. In the video, Leona's voice was calm but charged. "My name is Leona Clarice Carter. I'm 12 years old, and I've spent my entire life being chased by a secret my mother died to protect." The recording shifted to Clarice's message, then to documents flashing across the screen. Internal memos, confidential research files, timestamps, financial logs. Some bearing Benjamin Grayson's signature. Back in the war room, Nicholas stood behind her as the live view count surged past 40,000. Ramirez monitored chatter from law enforcement, the press and private security. "They're scrambling," he said, and Benjamin's already issued a statement denying everything. Jordan scoffed, too late. Elsewhere in a glass high-rise lined with boardroom leather, Benjamin Grayson slammed his fist on the conference table. "She's just a child." A stoic woman in a black blazer replied, "A child with the world's attention, sir." A legal aide entered pale-faced federal agents, just unsealed a subpoena. "They're raiding 2 of our research facilities tonight." Benjamin's voice dropped to a growl. "Get Nicholas on the phone. Now." But Nicholas wasn't answering. He was walking with Leona to the roof of the warehouse, watching the city pulse with headlights and distant sirens. "You realize you've just burned down an empire," he said. Leona turned to him, eyes unwavering. "Then we build something better from the ashes." Nicholas smiled, faintly proud, and haunted all at once. Back inside, Joyce and Malcolm stood beside the screen. News anchors now debate the footage live, lawmakers called for immediate investigations. Former employees began contacting Jordan anonymously. The dam had cracked. Leona sat down with a thick envelope in her hands. It had arrived an hour ago from a courier with no return address. Inside were old photographs, handwritten notes, and a list of children. 37 names. She scanned it slowly. Some names she recognized from the files. Others were mysteries. "They need to be found," she whispered. Nicholas nodded, "and we will." Down in a federal holding cell, Benjamin stared at a flickering fluorescent light as a guard locked the door behind him. Outside, reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed, protesters gathered. And above it all, a girl with a gear-shaped ring had torn open history to let in the light. 5 months later, spring swept through the city like a long-held breath, finally exhaled. In a once-forgotten lot nestled between two aging warehouses, a new structure gleamed beneath the morning sun. Its facade brushed steel, and clean glass reflected not just light, but purpose. Above its entrance in bold lettering, Horizon Spark Center for Young Inventors. Leona stood on the front steps in a dark blue hoodie and high-top sneakers, her fingers curled around a clipboard, her mind already 3 tasks ahead. Inside, dozens of children roamed wide halls lined with invention stations, 3D printers, whiteboards scrawled with schematics and robotics kits. This was her mother's dream, rebuilt as her own. Nicholas approached with 2 donors trailing behind him, now dressed not in suits, but a rolled-up Oxford and worn jeans. He looked 10 years younger. "We've secured funding through 2027, he told her, private and public. Leona nodded, scanning the hallway. "Room 14's sensors are still acting up. I'll check them after orientation." He smiled. "You know, you don't have to fix everything yourself anymore." She met his eyes, "But I can." In the back of the building, Joyce taught biology in a converted lab, while Malcolm ran the machine shop with a quiet grin. Jordan worked full-time, documenting the journey. Part filmmaker, part archivist. Later that afternoon, Leona paused outside a quiet room. Inside, 7 children sat around a table, notebooks open, eyes wide. Some were from the list. Others had arrived by word of mouth, referred by teachers, social workers, and friends. Some had talents like hers. Others were just beginning to find their spark. She stepped in. "Hi," she said, simply. "My name's Leona. You probably know the story, but what matters isn't what happened back then. It's what we do now." She reached into her pocket and pulled out the gear ring, not as a relic, but a tool. "Here," she said, setting it on the table. "This is where it started for me, but this place, this moment, is where it starts for you." Outside, the press gathered for the ribbon cutting. Nicholas handled them with the practiced ease of a man who used to sell skyscrapers. But the headlines told a different story now. "Orphan girl who brought down a billionaire. Open center for future innovators." Inside, Leona walked the halls like someone building not just rooms, but futures. She paused beneath a newly mounted plaque near the atrium. It read, "Every mind deserves a spark. Every child deserves freedom." 3 months after the launch, Horizon Spark was more than a center. It was a movement. From Baltimore to Baton Rouge, students from overlooked communities submitted applications with makeshift portfolios, sketches on napkins, cardboard prototypes, ideas scribbled in the margins of math homework. What they lacked in Polish, they made up for in brilliance. And Horizon welcomed them. Inside the main innovation hall, Leona adjusted the robotic arm on a student's drone as a group of visiting educators observed from the gallery. "It's not about fixing broken systems," she explained, not looking up. "It's about building new ones that don't need fixing." Nicholas watched from a distance, his arms folded, pride stitched into his silence. He had once closed deals in rooms lined with mahogany and quiet manipulation. Now he stood beside repurposed lockers and laughed when covered in sawdust. The transformation wasn't just Leona's. That afternoon, Leona received a letter from Washington, not just an invitation to speak before the Education Oversight Committee, but a request to consult on national policy regarding gifted youth support programs. "You've become a symbol," Joyce said gently that night. Leona shook her head. "Symbols don't build policy, but I can help make sure what happened to me never happens again." Meanwhile, Jordan's documentary, Gear Work, the Leona Carter story, premiered at a major film festival. The footage of Clarice's testimony had become a national conversation starter. And quietly away from cameras and applause, Horizon Spark launched a second initiative, the Signal Project. A database encrypted and secure to track children who had once been targeted by Eden and similar programs. It wasn't about vengeance, it was about protection. One night as Leona reviewed updates, she received a message from an unfamiliar email address. Victoria G. We need to talk. I've left the family. There are 5 more orphanages. I have the files. A's Banpo Oanda. Victoria Grayson. Leona stared at the screen, heart pounding. Nicholas stood behind her, having read the name She's My Sister. Leona turned to him. Then it's not over. No, he said, but this time we're ready. 5 years later, the Horizon Spark Center had become a national model. Replicated in 6 states, its halls were filled with students once written off by the very systems that now came to study them. In the heart of the original Seattle campus, a new wing stood dedicated to Clarice Carter. On its opening day, Leona stood beneath the atrium skylight, now 17 and taller, her presence sharpened but no less grounded. She wore a simple navy dress, the gear-shaped ring still on her finger, no longer symbolic of what was lost, but of what had been made whole. Nicholas, now gray at the temples, introduced her to the crowd. 5 years ago, this young woman exposed truths some of us never dared admit about our families, our systems, and ourselves. Today, she's not just a founder, she's a builder of futures. Applause rose, but Leona stepped forward with calm purpose. My mother used to say, broken systems aren't accidents, they're designed that way. We're not here to polish broken designs. We're here to rewrite the blueprint. In the audience sat Victoria Grayson, now a federal prosecutor. Her last name unspoken in official records. She had helped shut down the 5 orphanages she'd uncovered, each more chilling than the last. Leona had read every file, every name, every story. 37 became 72. She met with each child, some now young adults. She helped them reclaim their records, their truths, and their power. That afternoon on the rooftop garden overlooking the city, Nicholas stood beside her. You know, he said, watching students tinker below, you've become everything my father feared. Leona smiled softly. Good. They stood in silence as the wind rolled over the city that once tried to erase her. Later that night, as the sun dipped behind the skyline, Horizon Spark hosted its first alumni gala. Among them were scholarship recipients, tech startup founders, and a young boy named Ellis, once targeted by Project Eden, now presenting his AI prototype to national sponsors. Leona watched from the wings, eyes shining. Joyce and Malcolm stood nearby, arms linked. Jordan's newest film, The Blueprint Rewritten, played in the lobby. As the evening closed, Leona took the stage once more. 5 years ago, I fixed a broken car on the side of a quiet road. I thought I was just helping a stranger, but that moment taught me that even small acts can disrupt powerful systems. She paused. Today I don't just fix things. I design what comes next, and I invite all of you to do the same. The lights dimmed. The room stood in ovation. Outside, beneath the stars, the plaque on Horizon's wall gleamed. Every mind deserves a spark. Every child deserves freedom. And beneath it, in smaller engraving, in memory of Clarice Carter, who lit the first flame. The girl with the gear ring is more than a story. It's a blueprint for systemic change wrapped in emotional truth. What began as an isolated act of kindness led to the unraveling of institutional corruption, the reclaiming of stolen futures, and the birth of a new generation of changemakers. Leona Carter represents the power of one voice, one choice, and one spark, to illuminate what others tried to keep hidden. Her journey reminds us that justice isn't just about exposing darkness. It's about building something brighter in its place. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you think differently about power, legacy, or identity, please consider supporting this channel. Subscribe, share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and help us keep telling stories that matter. Subscribe for more soul-stirring stories of truth, courage, and transformation. Your support helps keep powerful narratives like this alive.